Welcome back, everyone, to Echoes of Ihsan. You know, we love to go deep on these Islamic sources, and today we're diving into something pretty interesting.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Sahih Bukhari Book 72 is all about dress.
That's right. All about clothing.
But of course, this is more than just fashion tips from back in the day.
Definitely not just fashion.
This book really gets into how outward appearances connect to our intentions and actions.
It all ties back to this beautiful concept of Ihsan.
Ihsan, that striving for excellence in all that we do, both inwardly and outwardly, and we'll see how dress plays a role in that.
Exactly. And we've got some fascinating stuff to uncover.
Yeah, like, did you know we'll even get some details about Prophet Muhammad's own personal style?
We'll see what kind of clothes he favored.
And how his choices reflect his character. Plus, we'll explore the idea of fitra.
That natural inclination towards goodness.
And we'll even touch on specific guidelines for what to wear and not wear during Ihram.
The pilgrimage to Mecca.
I'm excited to jump in. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, so the very first hadith in this book tackles a pretty interesting topic, dragging one's garment out of pride.
Interesting. So right off the bat, we're addressing arrogance.
Yeah, it seems like a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the importance of humility in Islam.
It's a powerful reminder that even our clothing shouldn't be used to show off or seek attention.
Right, it's not about the length of your garment, but the intention behind it.
Exactly. If it's dragging accidentally, that's one thing.
But if you're purposely letting it trail to make a statement,
That's where the problem lies.
it reminds me of a story about Abu Bakr.
Oh, yes. One of the Prophet's closest companions.
He was worried because one side of his izar, that lower garment,
Right.
kept dipping low.
He was concerned people might think he was being arrogant.
And I love how the Prophet, peace be upon him, reassured him.
What did he say?
He said, "You are not one of those who do that out of conceit."
Beautiful. It's about the heart, the inner state.
Exactly. And speaking of inner states, this book gives us a glimpse into the Prophet's own character through his clothing.
That's fascinating. I always love learning those personal details.
Me too. Like,
Oh.
for example, we learn he had a cloak called a Najram bird.
A Najram bird.
Yeah, made from this thick, high-quality fabric. And there's this funny anecdote about a Bedouin who,
Wait, a Bedouin pulled on his cloak?
yeah, he tugged on it so hard it left a mark on the Prophet's shoulder.
Oh, wow. And how did the Prophet react?
With incredible patience.
You didn't get angry.
Nope. He just smiled and told his companions to give the Bedouin something in return.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really shows his generosity and his ability to look beyond outward actions.
Right, to see the heart.
And there are other stories that highlight his humility and detachment from material possessions.
Like that time he was gifted a burda, a type of shawl.
Right. And what did he do with it?
He gave it away to be used as someone's burial shroud.
Subhanallah, he was so selfless.
And then there's the story of the black camisa.
Camisa like a robe.
Yeah, he gifted it to a little girl named Khalid.
Oh, that's so sweet.
All these little details paint such a vivid picture of his character.
They really do. For the Prophet, clothing wasn't about status or wealth.
Right, it was about simplicity, practicality, and caring for others.
It makes you reflect on your own relationship with clothes, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, do we buy things out of need, or are we trying to impress others?
Are our closets overflowing while others struggle to even have basic clothing?
Such important questions to consider.
They are, if the Prophet, peace be upon him, chose to live so simply.
What does that say about our own pursuit of material wealth and status symbols?
How can we cultivate that same spirit of contentment and generosity? It's a beautiful reminder, that our outward appearance should reflect our inner state.
Speaking of inner purity, there's this concept of fitra that comes up in the hadiths.
Yes, there.
Now, for those who might not be familiar, can you explain what that means?
Sure, fitra is essentially this natural disposition towards goodness that we're born with.
So it's like our innate inclination towards what's right and pure.
Exactly like a spiritual compass guiding us back to our true nature.
Interesting, and the hadiths actually list some specific practices as part of this fitra.
Like circumcision, shaving pubic hair, clipping nails, and trimming the mustache?
It's fascinating how these personal hygiene practices are linked to this idea of inner purity.
It highlights the connection between our physical and spiritual selves.
Right, caring for our bodies is an extension of our inner state.
It's about honoring that natural order that Allah has created.
And this focus on purity and fitra becomes even more important during Ihram.
Of course, during the pilgrimage to Mecca.
There are specific clothing prohibitions mentioned for those undertaking Hajj.
Right, during Ihram, men can't wear shirts or turbans, trousers, hooded cloaks, or certain fabrics.
So it's about stripping away outward distinctions,
Exactly. Everyone stands before Allah as equals.
dressed in those simple white garments.
It's a powerful symbol of humility and unity.
And by shedding those external markers of identity,
The focus shifts inward to the spiritual essence of the pilgrimage.
a return to that state of fitra.
It resonates with this universal desire for simplicity and authenticity.
Even for people outside of Islam,
Yeah, this idea of letting go of
of
excess.
stripping away the layers and returning to a more essential way of being.
Perhaps that's something we all crave deep down.
It does make you think, do we place too much emphasis on our outward appearance
On the brands and labels that we wear?
instead of cultivating the inner qualities that truly matter?
That's a profound question for all of us to consider.
Now, while we're talking about clothing guidelines, I'm curious about the hadiths regarding silk.
Ah, yes, silk.
It's generally forbidden for men.
Yes, that's the general rule.
But then there are exceptions.
Right, there are always exceptions based on necessity.
How do we reconcile those seemingly differing views?
It's a great example of how we need context and understanding when studying these teachings.
So, on the surface, it might seem contradictory.
But when you look deeper, you see a more nuanced approach.
So the general prohibition on silk for men is about extravagance.
Partly, yes, and also about maintaining a distinction between men's and women's attire.
It was about those social norms of the time.
Exactly. But Islam recognizes that there are always individual circumstances.
So, for example, if a man has a skin condition that makes wearing other fabrics unbearable,
Then silk is allowed.
it makes sense. There's that flexibility and compassion.
It's not about blind adherence to rules.
It reminds me of that story about Umar.
Umar ibn al-Khattab.
Yeah, one of the Prophet's companions.
He was known for his strong personality.
He questioned the Prophet about the silk prohibition.
He wondered why he wouldn't wear it for special occasions.
But then later on, the Prophet gifted him a silk garment.
Oh, wow, so he actually gave him silk.
And when Umar asked about it, the Prophet explained that he could either sell it or give it to someone else.
That's so interesting.
It shows that his actions were based on principle, not personal preference.
And that there's wisdom behind these rulings.
It encourages a more thoughtful and nuanced understanding of faith.
Absolutely. It's not about clinging to rigid interpretations without considering the context.
And the potential for exceptions,
Right. It's a beautiful reminder for all of us.
especially in a world that often favors black and white thinking.
This deep dive into dress goes even further, actually.
Oh, how so?
It touches on the Islamic perspective on images and other adornments.
Right, those are also addressed in this book of Sahih Bukhari,
The hadiths take a strong stance against making and keeping pictures.
especially those depicting living beings,
It might seem strange to us today,
in a world that's so saturated with images.
but it's important to remember the context.
This was the time when idolatry was prevalent,
And Islam wanted to establish a clear distinction between the creator and the created,
so it was about safeguarding the purity of faith.
making sure that nothing stood as a rival to the worship of Allah.
There are even stories of the Prophet removing pictures from his own home.
And about the angel Gabriel refusing to enter a house with images.
It shows how serious this prohibition was.
It wasn't just about aesthetics.
It was about protecting the sanctity of belief and worship,
And this concern extended beyond just pictures.
to other forms of adornment as well.
The hadiths also talk about women using false hair or getting tattoos or filing their teeth for beauty.
These actions are strongly condemned,
It's about promoting authenticity.
embracing our natural beauty rather than trying to alter it,
And this principle applies to men as well.
like the prohibition on men wearing gold rings,
It's all connected to this idea of modesty and humility.
shifting the focus from outward adornment to inner qualities.
But it does raise an interesting question.
What is it?
How do these teachings relate to our modern world?
With its ever-evolving ideas about beauty and self-expression.
Do they still hold relevance today?
It's a question worth exploring.
It really is a fascinating question, isn't it? How do we apply these timeless principles in a world that's constantly pushing us to be someone we're not?
I mean, think about it. This book was revealed centuries ago in a completely different cultural context.
Right, and yet these teachings still feel so relevant today.
And really speaks to their universality, you know?
It does. They speak to something deep within us.
Right. This innate desire to connect with our true selves and with our Creator.
And to express that connection through our actions, our words, even our clothing.
It makes me wonder if Prophet Muhammad were alive today. What do you think he would say about all this?
I don't know. I mean, how would he approach contemporary fashion trends, all the pressures to conform to certain styles?
I imagine he would encourage us to be mindful
To question those trends, to look beyond the surface.
and to really think about the messages we're sending with our clothing choices.
Right. Are we dressing to please Allah, or are we trying to fit in?
Are we seeking validation from others, or are we expressing our unique personalities?
In a way that's authentic and wholesome.
And don't forget the ethical dimension.
Oh, right. The impact of our choices on others and on the environment.
I mean, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was known for his simple lifestyle, his care for creation.
It's hard to imagine him endorsing the fast fashion industry.
With all its waste and exploitation,
It really challenges us to be more conscious consumers, doesn't it? To support ethical brands, to buy less to make our clothes last longer.
to really think about the story behind every garment we wear.
It's about recognizing that even something as seemingly mundane as clothing can be a form of worship.
A way of aligning our outward actions with our inner values
It's about seeking beauty that's both pleasing to the eye.
and pleasing to Allah.
This deep dive into Sahih Bukhari has been truly eye-opening.
It's shown us that these teachings aren't just about rules and regulations.
They're about guiding us towards a more mindful and meaningful way of life.
A life where even our clothing choices reflect our commitment to Ihsan.
That's striving for excellence in all that we do.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to take a closer look at my own wardrobe
Me too, to really think about what my clothes say about me.
and to make sure that they're aligned with my values.
That's a great takeaway from this deep dive.
And for all of you listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
How did these teachings resonate with you?
How do you approach the world of clothing and adornment?
Share your reflections with us on social media.
And join us next time for another deep dive into the Echoes of Ihsan.
Until then, may your hearts be filled with light.
And may your steps be guided by wisdom.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you.